Welcome to the My Brain, My Happiness podcast. My name is Joe, and on each episode, it is my goal to spread awareness on mental health. No, I'm not a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a medical doctor. I'm just a guy who has had a lifelong relationship with mental illness, specifically OCD. Together with you, I want to blow the roof off the stigma that comes with having a mental illness. You need to know you're not alone. I promise this podcast will be upbeat and positive. My goal with each episode is to make you understand that you don't have to take this on alone or in silence. Now let's change some lives. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of My Brain, My Happiness. I am settled in with my Diet Coke. And this is episode number 17, and I got a very special guest with me today, the one and only Dr. Jessica Dillon, doctor of pharmacy, who happens to also be my daughter. And I hope this is her first of many visits with me. And I'd love if this podcast became a father-daughter podcast. What do you think about that? Anyway, Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm very excited that you're here. We know that we've talked about mental illness can be an hereditary thing. And so on this podcast, I just try to keep it real, right? I don't hold back. I drop F-bombs all the way through the thing. And even though, I know how you talk, so I really don't care if I drop an F-bomb or two in front of you because that's just how you are.
Yep.
Anyway, so Jess,
Yes.
You are, 26 now?
Yeah.
26 years old. Holy shit, I can't believe it. And so let's talk a little bit about your history a little bit, right? Now, when did you first discover that you had like an anxiety issue or depression issues or shit like that?
Yeah. So, the earliest I can think back to it is maybe being 8 or 9. And, this is one of those things where I don't know if it was truly anxiety or just kids growing up and learning about life in the world. But I very distinctly remember being 8 or 9 and having what I could pretty much describe as a panic attack. I can probably maybe even was younger than this because you and Mom might have still even been married at this point. So way young. And I remember having a full-on panic attack about the fact that I was going to die one day.
Yeah.
And not knowing what happened after that. And there was no event that triggered this. No one in our family had died recently. This was at a point where I don't even think that I really experienced death or anything. Our dog died when I was, 7, 8 years old. But other than that, didn't experience it. And, I'm sure other kids have fears about dying, but this was a thought that I could not get out of my head for weeks, months at a time. I remember it was a topic where if someone had died that we knew in the family, they couldn't talk about it around me because I would just go into full-blown panic mode.
Yeah. Okay. So these it was like an intrusive thought, right? So you would think about this from the time you woke up, probably to the time you went to bed, right? It was on your mind pretty much all day when you were when it was at its worst. Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's not. I never could, properly diagnose somebody. I'm not a therapist, and I've said that a million times on this, but it sounds like. That sounds like OCD to me, right? Mm-hmm. Intrusive thoughts, OCD, intrusive thoughts, and I think you've admitted that you've been, you have OCD a bit. It's those nagging intrusive thoughts that won't go away that can be it can be a pain.
So my anxiety and diagnosis history is kind of all over the place because I feel like depending on what health professional I've gone to, I get a different diagnosis. And as someone that has had to read the diagnostic criteria for these mental illnesses, going through pharmacy school and taking psych rotations, I get how there's an overlap between so many of these different diseases and how it could be so easy to incorrectly diagnose someone. So At one point, I had professionals calling it OCD. Other points, there's been just general anxiety disorder, it's been called. Other times, most recently, I think the diagnosis that I carry now is like PMDD, which is depression that surrounds my like cycle as a woman, like around my period, more so than just traditional PMS might affect someone. So that's the most recent diagnosis I had. And I want to say that's probably the one that is the most accurate. But that being said, I started having these intrusive thoughts and anxiety way before I, went through puberty, before I was experiencing anything that would trigger PMDD. So might be a little bit of that, might be a little bit of general anxiety. As a pharmacist, I can't diagnose myself. Mm-hmm. So I am just kind of, I can say what symptoms I have. Whether or not it's worth putting a label on is a different story, but something that I've been dealing with for a long time.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you that my intrusive thoughts started, I don't know, the first ones I can remember is when I was a teenager. And if you go down and you look at the list, and I've said this before on so many other episodes that I've done here, if you go down and you look at all the common intrusive thoughts that people with OCD have, I've had them all. I've questioned sexuality. I've been afraid of dying. I've been afraid of that I had cancer. I've been, the thought that I was going to harm people, like harm my kids. Don't worry, you're still here, right? So everything's okay. Don't worry, I'm not going to go fucking, snappy here, okay?
Okay, I hope not.
These are just intrusive thoughts that actually, and right? So the intrusive thoughts that you have, they're unwanted, right? You want to stop thinking about them, and you can't, and because they're scary, mm-hmm. right? They're scary. These are not like anybody can, I saw a therapist one time, right? And he told me anybody could think that thought, have that bad thought, and then just let it go. The problem is when you have OCD, you can't let it go, and you overanalyze it, and you think about it all day, and you're like, why am I thinking about it? And then you're out there trying to find an answer that you cannot get because no answer will ever satisfy the question. Like when you were afraid of dying, right? Mm-hmm. No matter what anybody probably told you back then, mm-hmm. it was never enough, I bet.
No.
Right? No matter what they said, it was never enough to put you at ease. Mm-hmm. And I know that feeling. So I would go out and research and look, and I would talk to people, and I would, and I would just look for someone to be like, oh, you know what, you're going to be okay because here's the answer to this. This is why this is not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But nothing, you're constantly looking for an answer that's just not there because your brain won't allow you to accept anything as an answer.
Yeah. And, everyone kept saying to me, like, oh, that's so long away. You're going to have such a long life. You don't have to worry about this now. But I think the part that gave me the most anxiety was the fact that this was going to happen mm-hmm. at some point. And that's something that I still struggle with to this day, the unknown.
Yeah.
And I feel like it happens at the worst times, which, again, like you said, it's something you can't control. You don't want these thoughts. And it's something so small that can trigger and put you into this spiral. I remember probably the worst instance of anxiety that I had, of these thoughts of it going on for days, was ironically at the place that's supposed to be the happiest place on earth, was at Disney World.
Really?
Yeah. I remember being in Dino Land, whatever that roller coaster is that's no longer there, that spins around.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that thing.
Yeah. And backstory, like, how often we went to Disney growing up, and how this is a place that, is very close to my heart as someone that went there a lot growing up and still goes to this day. But I remember being in line and looking at the artwork and just thinking, oh, that's a dinosaur. The dinosaurs are dead. I'm going to be dead one day. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And it was a spiral. And it was like day 4 of this trip.
Wow.
Did 4 of 7. And I very distinctly remember being in that line, going into a panic attack, and then for the rest of the trip, the rest of the week-long trip, there'd be times where Mom would just look at me and I would be sobbing in line.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't control it. And I felt guilty about the fact that I was having anxiety, knowing that Mom probably spent all this money on this trip.
Yep.
I was sad that, this is, like, we go to Disney a decent amount, but, it's not like we're locals that we can go anytime. Like, I knew that I probably wasn't going back for a couple of years, and I was sad about the fact that I wasn't enjoying this trip to its fullest potential.
Yep.
And I felt like something was taken from me from my anxiety, because this trip, the enjoyment of this trip was taken away from me because of my mental health.
Well, and that feeling that you had was valid. Like, it does, anxiety and mental illness and all that. Well, anxiety is mental illness, but it all it does take away stuff from you, and it's unfortunate, but it's something that. And you know what else is, people who don't have it, who never suffered from mental illness, cannot and will not ever understand. They can be sympathetic and empathetic and tell you, what can I do to help and all that. And in all reality, all we want from them is just their support. You know what I mean? Just be there for us and say it's going to be okay. The worst thing that I found, and I've talked about this too, and you probably feel the same way, is don't look at me and say, just think about something else. Or don't look at me and say, well, think about all the good things you have. If we could do that, we'd fucking do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if it was that easy, we would do it, right? So I don't get mad at people when they say shit like that, and I know it's because they just don't get it. They don't get it because you can't explain when you have that intrusive thought that you have that fear of death, right? And the fact of the matter is, we are all going to die someday. I used to be petrified of dying, right? And I used to be petrified to get on an airplane. Hell, I still get petrified to go to the dentist. The dentist has never hurt me. I don't know where the phobia of the dentist comes from, but it's a phobia that I have, and I have to take extra anxiety medicine when I go to the dentist. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's just something that I have lived with pretty much my entire life. And so lots of people fear death. Nobody wants to die, right? I mean, most, we all know it's going to happen. We don't want it to happen. Some of us do things better than others to try to take care of ourselves and try to live as much of a productive life as we can. But I will say that what I've learned through having a mental illness is that it is really a thief of joy. And the more that you let it steal your happiness and your joy, the more time that's just time that's wasted, that's gone by. And so I have learned to accept the fact, okay, I have a mental illness. I've accepted the fact that I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I accepted the fact that I have anxiety, and I do whatever I have to do to deal with that. So I go to therapy. I'm on medication, and I know that you've been to therapy. You still go to therapy?
I have not been since COVID. It's been a bit.
Okay.
I don't have a good answer for why I don't go, to be quite honest. I don't know if it's lack of time or I've just found other ways to deal with my mental illness. To be quite honest, I never really got a lot out of therapy, and not saying that therapy is not a great option for many people. In fact, I think most people with a mental illness probably can benefit from therapy. Hell, people that don't have a mental illness can probably benefit from therapy. It was just not something that I got a lot out of personally. So I use other skills to kind of manage my mental illness.
And maybe the skills that you learned in therapy.
That's very true.
That you don't even know that you use to this day. I talk about coping skills all the time. I'm on TikTok talking about it, and there's a ton of things that you have to have in your toolkit to be able to do on your own, because you don't have a therapist with you 24 hours a day, right? And so sometimes when you're going through something, you need to be able to pull from your own toolkit, your own coping skills that you use. Now,
there are things that I still to this day will quote that I remember my therapist has told me in the past, as someone that has like anxiety and depression around like creating relationships with other people, and always feeling like I'm getting disappointed by other people, like I'd be sad about something that someone did to me. It's emotionally exhausting to be sad all the time.
Yeah.
So,
yep, it is.
I remember a therapist telling me, like, don't get sad, get mad. Get mad they did something to you and realize that you deserve better. Like, don't sit in the pity party by yourself. Get mad.
Yeah.
And do something about it.
There is a motivational speaker out right now. Her name, not actually, but there's a motivational speaker who's very popular right now. Her name is Mel Robbins. I don't know if you've ever heard Mel Robbins.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, she has written a book, and I actually downloaded the audio book, and I'm listening to it right now, and it's a new theory, and it's called, I don't know if it's new or not, but it's new to me, and this book is new, and it's called the Let Them Theory. And the bottom line is that there are people who are going to want to crush your dreams. There are people who are going to have a different opinion of you. There are going to be people who are not going to agree with you. There are going to be people who are going to talk bad about you. And you know what you say to that? You say, let them. Just let them. Because I'm who I am. I believe what I'm going to believe. I know what I can do. I know what dreams I'm going to chase. And if someone doesn't want to support that, I don't care. Let them. Let them not support me. You decided you were going to be a pharmacist. And that is, 6 years of schooling. You have to be extremely smart to do it. You went through it, this grueling thing. Then you had your residency and your whatever else they call it. The residency. Whatever. Yeah. Okay. So, and nothing stops you from that success, and that should prove to you that you can accomplish anything. And if someone has something bad to say about you, you know what, you're not going to ever change that, right? There are people who say shit about me. I know they do, right? Or it used to really bother me when I would post something on social media thinking that I was doing something positive or saying something good, and somebody would like attack me for it. I used to get really down in the weeds and argue with people. And now I just say, fuck it, let them be that way. I don't care if I used to worry about you talked about you were worried about you were upsetting mom because she spent a lot of money on the trip and all that. And the bottom line is, I'm sure she wasn't disappointed or upset with you, but you have to be able to say, I'm not going to make everybody happy. There's no way. It's not possible for me to make everybody happy. And I have to do what I need to do to make sure that I am taking care of myself, not in a selfish way, but sort of in a selfish way. Not in a selfish way where you're being inconsiderate to other people, but in a selfish way where you have to put your own mental health and stability, you have to put that first. And so you have to sort of just take the attitude that not everybody's going to like me. And you know what? That's okay. Let them. That bitch that I work with that I don't like, or that asshole that I work with that I don't like, they say shit about me. Let them. I don't care. As long as I go to work and my boss says that I'm doing a good job and whatever, if that person doesn't like the work I'm doing, as long as my boss likes the work I'm doing, I don't care what that other person thinks. Mm-hmm. It has taken me, I'm 55. It probably took me 53 and a half years to get there. I don't remember when I finally started to just let this shit roll off my back, but it has been very recent. It was not at 26. At 26, I was probably in the same boat as you were. I was worried about people upsetting me and what they thought, and did they like me? I always wanted everybody to like me. And now, it's just, I've realized that that's just not the way the world works. But it has taken me a long time to get here. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, are you on do you take any medications right now? Or do you take any?
I am on Prozac. I've been on Prozac. Oh God, it's probably been 4 or 5 years at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
And it has significantly helped me. I know that, I think you tried Prozac and you said it didn't work for you as much, but it's going off that topic that psych meds are just kind of that crazy beast where you never know what's going to work until you try it, unfortunately, for a lot of people.
That is true. I always tell people also that I think it's important not only to be in therapy, but I also think it's important to work with a psychiatrist to nail down your medication, especially when it comes to mental health. Because I find that the first person to ever put me on medication was my medical doctor, right? My primary care physician. And they're just going to put you on whatever SRSI they're dealing with, whatever vendor they're dealing with, and that's what they're going to give you.
What did you call that med?
SRSI?
That is not what it is.
SSRI.
Good job.
I've been saying SRSI for I don't know how many podcasts. SSRI. Oh. See, that's why I got you here. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be a wise ass about it, all right? Okay?
But I want to be a wise ass about it.
God, yeah. Unbelievable. Anyway, SSRI. And the first one I was on, you're right, was Prozac, and I felt like it was making my skin crawl at the time. And you know what? That was because, I'm going to tell you something. You want to talk about OCD? That was, I couldn't deal with the fact that, I had a tough time dealing with the fact that the women I was with in my life, like your mother, this was the first time I was on, was when I was with your mom. For those of you who don't know, that was my first wife. I'm on my third marriage. I've discussed that before. But anyway, I couldn't deal with accepting the fact that people had a past before me. Mm-hmm. That people had been in other relationships before me. And I would picture their relationship with somebody else.
All right, you were talking about my mother. Let's not get too in-depth about this.
I wasn't going to go down that road.
Okay.
All right? Jesus Christ. Anyway, so I just had that was one of the first OCD things that I've had. And so that's when I started the Prozac. Prozac, it just didn't work for me. But I was young, and I have done Celexa, and now I do Zoloft, but I'm on a very low dose of it. But for treating OCD, SSRIs mm-hmm. are the best medication out there, they say. I take that. I take Wellbutrin. I take Buspar. I take Seroquel. Am I saying that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I take clonazepam, and I take Xanax as needed. I'm a mess. But I believe in medication because medication, it works for me. I think you're saying it works for you, right?
It does.
Yeah. So I think it's important, and not everybody. It doesn't work for everybody. And there are people who are afraid of taking medication, and I find this a lot on my TikTok page when I talk about my medication, and people make a comment. I'm in that place too, but I don't want to take meds, and that's okay if you don't want to take meds, but you need to do something to help yourself. You can't sit around and suffer especially in silence. You can't internalize all that, because it is scientifically proven that not only will it mess with you mentally, but it will screw you up physically. Your brain can make your body believe anything, and it's been proven that if you just internalize just stress, long-term stress and anxiety and all that can have very, very negative impacts on you physically. So I think it's important to do whatever you need to do to get yourself right, no matter what it is. So, for instance, I think that exercise is extremely important. I think that eating a proper diet is extremely important. These are all things that are going to help. There's no downside to getting regular exercises and eating a healthy diet. There's no downside to it. There's only an upside to it. And you talk about being afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of dying per se, because it's going to happen eventually, but you want to make the years that you live quality years, right? So if I live till I'm 85, I'd like those to be 85 quality years. You can't help it if you're going to get cancer or something ridiculous like that along the way, right? Mm-hmm. There's no predicting that, but you want to it's not about how long I live, but how well I live. that's how I feel about it. I don't know where you stand with that. I know that you were at one time going to the gym on a regular basis and getting exercise and stuff. And I know that, like, I know your job is very demanding and very busy right now. But is there anything that you're doing currently that are you getting, like, at least getting your steps in, or what? Or is it just you got so much going on right now that you've found yourself not being able to get that done?
Yeah, probably the latter. Coming off a residency where I was working, the regular 8 hours a day and then having projects to do when I was done for the day, and just the mental toll of work. It was hard to get exercise in, and now the transitioning to the traditional pharmacist role, it is an emotionally draining job, and it's a tiring job, caring for people all day. If I make a mistake, that could be someone's life right there.
Yeah.
So I get home and I just kind of want to mentally decompress from the day. So I try to implement healthier habits when I can.
Mm-hmm.
My bad habit that I have is just wanting to go home and crash out. So my healthy habit that I've been implementing, not necessarily related to more diet or exercise, but just like the socialization aspect of mental health, is trying not to stay home all day every day.
Yeah.
Don't stay on the couch all day on my days off. Go outside every once in a while, reach out to friends for dinner or something along those lines, just so I am not, my entire life is not consumed by work.
Everything you just said that you're doing is critical for mental health. It is, like I said, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I do a lot of research, and socialization, actually loneliness right now is the leading cause of depression in this country right now, is loneliness. That all stemmed from the pandemic. And so a lot of people are working from home still, even though a lot of people have gone back to work. A lot of people are working from home, and loneliness is a leading cause of depression. I know exactly what you're talking about with the socialization part of it. I work from home, and I struggle with that, So, but it's good that you are socializing with your friends. Face-to-face interaction is extremely important, and those are things that you are definitely doing that is a good thing that's going to help you, deal with mental illness, and it's going to, whatever it is that you have, and it's going to help keep that in check. It's just a coping skill, and it's making yourself do something to keep yourself mentally in a good place. But as your father, I would tell you, I think you should start to exercise, because it's going to make you even better. There's no downside to it, as I said, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, again, working in healthcare, I see the repercussions of when people don't take care of themselves.
Exactly.
You think that would scare the shit out of me to get my work.
Yeah.
Get myself together, but easier said than done.
I know. Listen, I didn't start. It wasn't until 2022 that you remember how heavy I was.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, I was almost 270 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, I lost 80 pounds. I put probably 20 of that back on, but I had gotten to a point where people were telling me they were saying I was too skinny. But I'd still like to take 10 pounds off, and I'm working on that. But even still, I've basically kept that weight off, right? I'm never going to go back to that, because I couldn't even walk. My knees hurt so bad. And that's what I go back when I talk about quality of life, your quality years versus the number of years. So, I just think it's important to even if you start small and you say, look, I'm going to set aside 20 minutes a day, and I'm just going to go for a walk. Start off with a 20-minute walk every day. That's it, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You can spend 20 minutes on you get home, you can spend 20 minutes sitting down doing nothing. Or you could just go for a 20-minute walk, 10-minute walk. I don't even care. But what it is about consistency, and then you start to build from that, and it'll just help out. So I don't know how much you can and cannot talk about medication, and I'm not looking for you to give medication advice to anybody, because that's not what we do on this podcast. That's not what I do. I don't give any kind of advice from a like that a therapist should be giving, or a psychiatrist or a medical doctor. I talk about just my coping skills that I use. But I have talked to people, or a lot of people on, especially on in my on TikTok, will tell me they're afraid of medication. They're afraid of the side effects from it. I try to tell people, hey, look, if you have a headache and you have no problem taking a couple Advil to take care of your headache, but people are always so worried about the long-term side effects that come with being on like an antidepressant or any kind of medication to treat a mental illness. But I think they're still, even though they've been around for a while, they're still relatively new in the world of medicine, right? Antidepressants. I mean, if you think about it, they haven't been around for 100 years, right? I mean, I don't know how long they've been around for, but...
No, I don't even know how long they've been around for.
But,
like in terms of modern medicine.
Right. So, but would you say... I always tell people that they should listen to their doctor.
Yeah.
And that if their doctor recommends they be on medication, they should take it. I bet you that you prescribe a bunch of antidepressants or mental illness type medications in your job. You probably see a lot of it all the time, right?
Tons of it. So many people are on some sort of psych med when they get admitted.
And probably benefiting tremendously from it, I would imagine. But it's, if you spend your entire life living in fear, you're never going to get out of life what you want if you live your life in constant fear. And so that's how I look at it with medication. I've never been afraid of medication, but I know everybody's got their hang up, but somehow you have to find a way to look at your fears and those obstacles, and you got to find ways to overcome them, or you're never going to get to the other end of that, the other side of it, where your dreams and your goals and the life that you want is on the other side. It takes work, and if sometimes you need medication to help you out, if your doctor recommends it, I think as a pharmacist, what I'm saying is that you don't hear about you don't hear about a lot of like all long-term side effects in your studies. Do they talk about side effects of medication at all?
Yeah.
Or long-term side effects? What could happen?
Long-term, honestly, it's been a bit since I've looked at the long-term side effects, so I don't know if I can necessarily speak on that. Not saying there aren't any. Right. It's just, again, not something... I see them prescribed more in short term, just for like background. I'm in a hospital, so I'm seeing people when they're at their sickest. And only for a short amount of time. I'm not following these people for years and years. So long term, it's kind of hard for me to speak on those. That being said, what I can say is every single medicine, from the medicine that you think is probably the most benign medicine to some of the most complex medicine, everything has a risk, but everything can have some benefit. Mm-hmm. And that just is something that you need to think about, is the risk of this side effect that you heard about, whether it's your doctor saying that this might be a side effect, or you looked online and looked at this medication and other people are saying that they have this side effect. You have to think, is the risk of potentially having this side effect, does that risk outweigh the benefit that I will get from this medication? And for some people, the answer might be no. For some people, they might say, like, you know what, it might be worth trying it and potentially having this. And, if you do have a side effect and it's not something that you can tolerate, you can talk to your doctor and see if there's something else that might work better for you. Like I mentioned before, there's so many different psych meds, and it's just a matter of finding which ones work best for you.
All right, that was well said. Well,
Thanks.
Jess, this has been a great podcast. I've been talking about getting you on and us doing this. And, like I said, I would love it if this turned into a father-daughter podcast. And I'm sure we could shoot the shit all, about a bunch of different things. Both of us are kind of, we're kind of crazy. We share that. We share that gene. We share that gene. So
nothing will ever beat when I had to pick up my first Prozac prescription. And this is when we had the shitty insurance, so it was like $30-$40 for some reason.
Yeah.
And I looked at this and I was like, why the fuck am I paying for this? I'm not the one that causes depression. And I called you and I said, you should be paying for this in a fit of rage because, I have depression because of you. And
because of me. Because of me.
Yeah, well, you were like, you agreed. You couldn't argue with that. You were like, shit, I can't argue with that logic. And then you Venmoed me like $40 for the prescription.
Yeah, well. All right. Well, anyway, what we do, hey, listen, my podcast is all about wanting to help people and making people realize that they're not alone. And I think that, you being 26 and me being 55, there's, we can talk to a wide variety of different ages and a wider audience, and just giving people hope to realize that they can, like I said, you're a pharmacist, and I am doing very well in my job in cybersecurity, and you can live productive happy lives, with just knowing that, I hate to use the old cliche that you're not alone, but you're not. If you realize that there's help out there and there's places to go and there's people to turn to, you can accomplish anything you want to do in life. And I think that you and I are both proof that we can. And even this podcast is a dream of mine that I've been wanting to. I've been thinking about doing this podcast for years, and I finally did it, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it's not getting, there's not a lot of people listening to it right now, but maybe someday there will be. Maybe it'll never take off. I don't know, but I love doing them. And I don't give a shit what people think about me doing the podcast. There's some people that are like, oh my God, whatever. Maybe they're not. I don't care. But you know what? I just say, I use the old Mel Robbins theory. Let them think whatever they want. Anyways, Jess, so thanks for being on this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we're going to do more of these.
All right.
All right, so this has been Joe Dillon and Jessica Dillon on My Brain, My Happiness. Thanks everybody for listening. Until next time, be happy, be safe, peace, love you.
Bye.